The transfer portal window is closed. Or is it? Let's clear up some of the madness right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. Going to talk about Sam Horn's debut, by the way, for the Missouri baseball team on the mound yesterday, and also a new offensive lineman from Florida State added through the portal. I do want to start quickly by reminding you today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first ticket purchase. And I have to say, the transfer portal window is closed in basketball today. It's going to be closed on Friday in football as well. And just to be clear on what that means that we now know, on the basketball side at least, who all the defections are from Missouri basketball. In fact, Power Mizzou's Twitter account put out just a little bit ago that they're wrapping up some loose ends, confirming that now that the portal is closed, quote, the only departures were Aiden Shaw, Marcus Allen, and Peyton Marshall. But again, that doesn't mean that Missouri cannot still add players from the portal. And I think the assumption is they will add 2 additional players in the transfer portal. So while the portal is closed, it's also still open for sort of a to be determined amount of time, I suppose, an indefinite period. But I will say, after just perusing like the top 50 players, according to 24/7 Sports, their list really quickly, there were only just a handful of players still available. 25 was the Baker Mazzara kid from Auburn who just entered the portal after, well, they just came up just a tiny bit short. Well, wait, did they win the national championship? What happened? No, they lost in the Final Four. For a second, I was like, wait a minute, they beat Duke? No, they lost to Duke. Houston beat the... Who cares? That was not the point. My brain short-circuited there momentarily. But we're back on track. And the point here is that I should point out this as well. Grad students, that used to be another loophole where if you were a graduate, for example, getting that 5th year, well, you could be beyond, you could enter the transfer portal beyond that portal window. That's how Missouri got Connor Vanover a year ago, by the way. So all of this does make me wonder. Since the portal, as I said on yesterday's program, has not been, I would say, as lucrative, I think, as I would have expected so far. At least I would have hoped out of Missouri's basketball program. So that makes me wonder, how important of a year is this for Dennis Gates coming up? Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think he's in a lot of jeopardy of getting fired after this upcoming season or anything. As of now, Gates' buyout is $16.6 million. And I think that's going to go down after this coming season. But even though I don't have those exact numbers for you right in front of me, let's say it's half of that. Let's say it's $8 million after next season. That is still a significant amount of money just to simply pay somebody to go away, especially when you're paying somebody to go away in a sport that is not football. Obviously, Missouri this past season showed no willingness whatsoever to pay any buyout money, far less than what they'd have to pay out for Dennis Gates potentially. Listen, this is a scenario that none of us, I don't think, really want to happen. Obviously, we want Missouri to be good next year, but I'm just simply saying that Laird Veach, the Missouri Athletic Department, they've made it pretty clear that they are all in on football right now. The North End Zone complex reconstruction puts that in about as plane of actions as you possibly could have. So I have to say, with the NIL seemingly drying up for basketball in this cycle, I don't know that necessarily there's less money this time around. Maybe just the price of free agents in the portal has gone up that significantly. But I will say this, it does seem like Missouri not as competitive on the basketball side this time around, whereas on the football side, while Missouri is still stacking offensive and defensive linemen like it's going out of style, it would seem. Again, Missouri just got an offensive lineman. I'll tell you all about him in just a little bit here on the program. But sticking with basketball here for just a moment, while I still think Dennis Gates is definitely protected by that buyout for sure next season, the 5th highest in the SEC right now, the 15th highest in the country right now, according to the Columbia Tribune's Callum McAndrew. So I think over the short term here, Dennis Gates' job is fine. But with C.Y. Young leaving here, with maybe the NIL not as robust as it had been the previous cycle or two, is there maybe a little bit of writing on the wall here that Dennis Gates needs to get going this season? This is a huge season, I think, for the momentum of Missouri basketball, not just for Dennis Gates, but for the NIL side and everything else. I do think, though, that Dennis Gates does deserve a lot of benefit of the doubt here, especially regarding the transfer portal, because in the previous 3 cycles, I think Dennis Gates has done really, really well. You think about that first cycle, well, you had a bunch of Cleveland State guys, basically, and guys from the Horizon League that came to Missouri, and DeAndre Golston, Trey Gomillion, and Demoy Hodge, of course, as well. Though all 3 of those guys were really, really good players for Missouri. Noah Carter, too. And maybe that's just with a NBA player, a guy who ended up being an NBA player. Dennis Gates had a lot to say in his coaching staff with the development of Kobe Brown his senior year. But that first year, he essentially was able to surround an all-SEC type of player in Kobe Brown with role players and do it successfully to the NCAA tournament. Could that be the ticket this season? It is possible. Mark Mitchell could be the type of player that is maybe Kobe Brown caliber next season. And you got Anthony Robinson returning as well. As I said on yesterday's program, if Robinson can simply stop fouling as much and stay on the floor longer, that may be the biggest adjustment he can make of all. And I will still point something out, too, that while some of the most elite upper echelon guys who are ranked are gone at this point, there still are some really interesting guys out there. I think Rylan Griffin, formerly of Alabama and Kansas this past season as well, I think he's actually would be a very interesting fit in the Dennis Gates offense. He fit well in Alabama with their pace and space style. That's something similar to what Missouri does, not exactly what Bill Self is into. So maybe Rylan Griffin would be a fit for Missouri. Again, if you don't want to take a Jayhawk, hey, I'm kind of with you for the most part. But I'm just saying, as an example, there are still some interesting players out there. And considering Dennis Gates has done a pretty good job of identifying talent in the portal, I think this past year we all agree Mark Mitchell was a good addition to the team. Marquez Warwick was an excellent scorer. Jacob Cruz back for a second year. You're not going to find a ton of guys with his size who can shoot like he can. By the way, that previous cycle, even though Missouri was 0-19 famously, getting Tamar Bates and John Tanji and Caleb Grill, a couple guys who were injured that season on the ladder there, that class looks pretty doggone good too. So to me, Gates is really almost 3 for 3 in the portal. I don't love the return so far, but it's also not a final grade yet. So let's give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt, not only toward the end of this process, but let's see what this team actually looks like on the court before we render a final judgment. I think Gates' judgment the past 3 portal cycles has earned that. And coming up, Missouri been very active in the football spring portal period, adding now another offensive lineman, this one from Florida State, a guy with quite a bit of time left to develop. We'll talk about Jaylen Early coming up, and also Sam Horns 2025 debut on the mound for the Tigers in just a little bit. But you know what? I've been to a lot of NBA regular season games over the years. I'd love to go to a playoff game one day. And if I do, I got to say it's going to be with Gametime, because Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer more often than not, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. And on those last-minute deals, saving up to 60% on not just sports, but concert, comedy, theater as well. All-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And former Florida State Seminole Jaylen Early is your newest Missouri Tiger, the 6'4", 305-pound offensive lineman. Started 6 games last season on what was, well, not a very good Seminole offensive line, to be honest with you. I did notice that Pro Football Focus had him graded out better than any of the other Seminoles last season, but that may be damning him with faint praise, number one. But also, secondly, I frankly already regret even citing the Pro Football Focus scouting numbers for college, which are quite simply useless in my opinion. So forgive me, please. But he did start 6 games at right tackle and right guard for Missouri. I would say he's likely a depth piece for Missouri at this point, a guy who will come in and compete without a doubt, but I'm expecting that he won't be a starter this season. That's just my read of the situation. But, hey, maybe he'll go out there and prove me wrong. In the rest of the portal, I pointed out earlier this week that Eddie Kelly, the former Missouri defensive lineman, ended up at West Virginia. Ja'Kai Lang, by the way, ended up at SMU. So a couple of Big 12 programs there. So, again, when Missouri, if those guys are expendable on the defensive line, you got to think that Missouri's defensive line is quite loaded, as I've said, and Eli Drinkwitz has said as well. And also, Missouri legend Luke Bauer in the transfer portal, of course, the former Mizzou punter, hit the 4th down faked punt to Speedy Johnson in the Kentucky game 2023. Luke Bauer ending up at Michigan. So an impressive landing spot for Bauer as well. And recently Eli Drinkwitz was talking to the media, was asked the question if it's too early to start hating on Kansas. And Eli Drinkwitz quipped, "No, I've been doing that since I got the job," which is a funny answer. Number one, just that the idea that as soon as you're hired from Missouri, will you just automatically hate Kansas? But I do enjoy the propaganda. That's good stuff. But on this team itself, not only on the defensive line and just the defense in general, I think Drinkwitz is really high on. He says, quote, "I think the best thing about us right now is that we're not in a desperate need for anything." Now, of course, Missouri's quarterback position is not settled there yet, but I think they feel pretty good about their 2 options. And in fact, Drinkwitz is not giving any clues whatsoever yet about who is the leader in the clubhouse for the starting quarterback job. Of course, Bo Pribula was brought in the offseason from Penn State. If I were gonna bet on anybody, it would still be him, but all indications are that Missouri is giving Sam Horn every chance to win this job. Unfortunately, of course, Sam has had some trouble with arm injuries pitching. So, of course, a lot of Mizzou football fans were tuned into Mizzou baseball last night as Horn opened the game for the Tigers through 1 inning, gave up a hit, had a strikeout, no runs, just 8 pitches thrown by Horn, so some quick work there. fastest pitch clocked at 96 miles an hour. And the most important thing here for Horn, got through it without incident. So interestingly, though, of course, the MLB draft will be this summer as well. Horn, presumably, is going to be eligible for that. Correct me if I'm wrong. How is this all going to play out? Obviously, the more healthy he is, the better for Missouri football. At the same time, well, the more healthy he is, the stronger he shows that he can keep that 96 and above consistent. Well, then his MLB draft value goes up too. So an interesting give and take there on the Missouri side. And speaking of Missouri baseball, well, despite the fact that the Tigers are currently having not only an historically awful season for their program, but right now they're on pace to have the worst record in SEC baseball conference history. And in spite of that fact, the Tigers currently looking for bids to replace the Taylor Stadium turf. More than $1 million expected to be the price tag, probably closer to about $1.5 million for that particular project. And I got to be honest with you, of course, a lot of people are saying, why are we even doing this anymore? Why does Missouri even try, especially in the SEC? And honestly, I think Missouri needs to be back in the Big 12 for baseball. Now, of course, in every sport other than football, and I would say men's basketball, maybe women's basketball as well, I think going back to actual regional geographic conferences makes all the sense in the world. And to that point, Gabe DeArmond recently said on his website, Power Mizzou, of course it makes sense, but then what is the SEC network going to show for 6 months a year? Now, I realize obviously Gabe is being tongue-in-cheek there and a little bit sarcastic, but he's also being serious too and pointing out the real dynamics at play here. Now, which is certainly a good point by Gabe. My question is, does it really matter anymore what the SEC network shows other than football and basketball? And I guess live simulcast of the Paul Feinbaum show. But to me, that is part of an old, dying cable television model. As long as the SEC, from my perspective as a fan, as long as SEC football and SEC basketball, as long as that package is under the ESPN umbrella, well, that's all that really matters to me. And then secondarily, of course, stuff like stuff like Mizzou gymnastics and Mizzou softball and yes, Mizzou baseball. It's great that I can watch that on the SEC network, but really 9 times out of 10, that type of content is streamed on ESPN Plus. I just think we're obviously reaching a point where eventually all of ESPN's properties are going to be spun off into its own streaming type of package. Not just ESPN Plus and all that extra stuff, but everything that's under the ESPN umbrella, from First Take to PTI to the NBA to Sunday Night Baseball to, of course, the SEC and all that stuff. I think it's all going to come under one package here in the next few years. I don't exactly know when. It just seems like it is a matter of when and not if at this point. And when that happens, well, does it really matter? If you just flip on the idea of just flipping through the channels and, let's see what's on the SEC network. Well, we got to have something to play all day. That isn't really the case anymore. What you're really going to have is you're going to subscribe to whatever the ESPN package is for. God knows how much they're going to charge for it. Is it $30? Is it $50? Is it $20? I don't know. I bet it's closer to 50 than it is 20 if I'm guessing right now. But the point is everybody who buys into that, well, they're going to have what they want at the tip of their fingers. Just like for the most part, nobody is flipping through the channels, as it were, on Netflix, that type of deal. It's just not exactly the model anymore. So my point here is as we get away from that old model, is what is old not new again in terms of regional actual conferences. I'm not talking about football here. Football can be its own thing. But when it comes to the non-revenue sports, let's bring back some sanity here. I think there's going to be an opportunity for that over the next few years. Now, to make the most obvious statement ever, the Kansas City Chiefs are set at quarterback for the future. But when it comes to the backup position, did the Chiefs want to continue to be the place where veteran quarterbacks die? Or do they want to just sign Brady Cook as an undrafted free agent? I'm going to make that case here in just a minute. But you know what? Baseball is in full swing, and there is no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. And with Prize Picks, it's as simple as picking more or less on at least 2 player projections. For example, this week, you can take Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run and Shohei Ohtani for more than 1 stolen base. It's as simple as that. Fast and simple. Again, setting your lineup takes less than 60 seconds. When you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It's Prize Picks. Run your game. So last season when I was talking about Cody Schrader and what the best fit for him would be in the NFL, I thought it was an outside zone type of team. So when Schrader eventually ended up on the Rams, I liked the fit. But when it comes to Brady Cook this season, when I started thinking about it, well, what is the best spot for Brady to potentially end up as an undrafted free agent or as a late draft pick, of course, as well? But as an undrafted free agent, well, Brady will have some say in where he ends up. So I just got to thinking, what is the best spot for him? Well, I think it's a little bit different than with Schrader. I don't know that scheme is the most important thing to me. Obviously, with any of Missouri's players, I'd like them to end up in what I think is at least a relatively smart organization. I think the Los Angeles Rams qualified with Cody Schrader, by the way. But also, to be brutally honest with Brady Cook, I don't see him being a starter at the NFL level. I do think there's a chance he can be Chase Daniel, though, in that he can be a long-time NFL backup. But that will require him going to the right spot and finding a place that really likes him and values what he brings to the table. And it just got me thinking, you know what? Maybe Brady should go somewhere where he's definitely going to be the backup, where there is no real question that he's going to even try to play in year 1. Well, Kansas City would be a pretty good example of that. Am I correct? Especially, in my opinion, after the last couple of seasons, Carson Wentz was the Chiefs' backup this past season. Of course, hey, I've mentioned a former Missouri Tiger. Well, Blaine Gabbert was Mahomes' backup in 2023. Well, none of those guys are in the league currently. I don't know that Carson Wentz is going to find a landing spot in the NFL again. Well, now the Chiefs have signed Gardner Minshew for the coming season. And to be honest with you, in terms of cost, there's not much of a difference here. The rookie minimum is just under $800,000. Minshew, about $1.1 million for the Chiefs. So if we're talking about saving money, even a team like the Chiefs that has some high-dollar guys, not much in terms of saving there. But I will say this, maybe there is some value to not just chasing the next backup every season. You see, this is where it gets tough for Brady Cook, because as I'm sort of talking this out and saying, well, maybe there's some value into having the same backup every year, it's a pretty marginal value, especially when you consider that, again, Gardner Minshew, $1.17 million on a 1-year contract. That's basically absolutely nothing for a veteran, especially when, again, the rookie's minimum for even undrafted free agents is about $800,000. We're talking a $300,000 cap savings there. That's essentially peanuts in the NFL. That's a meaningless and insignificant amount of money. So that just shows you how tough it is to make the NFL as a quarterback, because if you don't have starters upside, and I'm frankly not sure that Brady Cook does, it just shows how hard it is to stick around, because every year there's a new crop of guys, a new handful of guys coming in who are going to make rosters, who have upside, who are at least you can squint and convince yourself that there's a 5% chance this guy could become a legit Pro Bowl type of starter one day. Well, unfortunately, that's why more marginal players physically, if you're not showing that you can start pretty soon, it gets really hard to hang around the league. So I really hope Brady Cook can maybe be the exception to the rule there. And with all that said, of course, with the NFL draft tomorrow, you got to check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Will Burden go in the first? Will Mimbu go as high as 4 to New England? All types of possibilities. Again, check out Locked On the NFL Draft. And thanks for making this show your first listen. I will see you all tomorrow, again on Locked On Mizzou.